Welcome everybody to the Melbourne Business Network Wind Down webinar series. Just a little bit about Melbourne Business Network for the few of you that may not have joined us previously. Operating since 1994, Melbourne Business Network is a member-based networking association that facilitates connections, communications and collaboration with businesses across the municipality of Melbourne through face-to-face networking activities and the B3000 Awards. Now, like a lot of you that have moved to online activities, we are also networking in a different way. So today I encourage you to post your LinkedIn URL into the chat box. Hopefully you can see that down the right-hand side there. And set up those virtual coffee meetings and converse with like-minded business people. So before we get started, I'd just like to say, as we're still gathering in person, I'd like to officially recognise the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to the elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Now we're going to set aside some time for questions towards the end of the webinar, but please feel free to pop your questions in the chat box as we go and I'll pick those up along the way and I'll let Angela know what questions you have. So while I am taking a minute to introduce Angela, perhaps you could start using the chat box and letting me know where you're logging in from today. Okay.
Hello. Can I just say hello because I'm vision impaired. I use speech software, so I find it easier just to talk to you. I'm Debbie and I'm from Bendigo.
Hi Debbie.
Awesome.
Thanks for letting us know.
Hi.
That's awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. You will see that you are muted along the way, but if you put your hand up or just let me know that if you do want to say something, let me know. All right, so for those of you who have joined us in the last week or two, you're already familiar with our guest presenter, Angela. So Angela is a member of the Melbourne Business Network and through her work supports professionals to remain committed without becoming consumed, burned out and ineffectual. Angela guides professionals to foster positive habits to counter the negative impacts of stress and helps people hardwire positive resilience habits into the brain through her Mind Your Mojo program. And it's those insights from this program that Angela's been sharing with us through the Wind Down webinar Wednesday series. So just to recap very briefly, our first week was about Resilience 101, where we focused on social, emotional, mental and physical resilience. And that Angela advocates doing something in each of these categories every day, every week or every month, depending on your level of activity, of course. Week 2 was the triad of wellbeing, where we focused on sleep, exercise and diet, standing at our desks, writing the alphabet with our wrists and body scan practices that help relax the body to help us get to sleep. So here we are at week 3. And today we're looking at understanding and calming the nervous system, where we'll all learn about how the body reacts to stress and ways to deliberately calm the nervous system. So Angela, hello and welcome.
Hi Anita, and hello everyone. It's good to see you and welcome to my lounge room. The office has been relocated today. It's, funny, my husband and I were both working from home and pretty much whoever gets the front office first keeps it for the afternoon.
First dibs in.
Yeah, first dibs in. So he was there before me. So I'm welcoming you this afternoon to my lounge room. It's kind of the closest we may get to, big gatherings for a while. Yes. So welcome and thanks for joining us today. It's I think this is a really important topic because we do all encounter stress every day in different ways. And I think it's important to understand what's going on in our bodies when we're stressed, and not just what's happening, but why it's happening, and then how we can calm our nervous system as well, because we do want to be able to do that deliberately, on demand. So I'll just start with what is our autonomic nervous system? Well, our autonomic nervous system it controls all the functions of our organs and our glands. It's responsible for regulating different body processes, such as our breathing, so our lungs, our heartbeat, our digestion, all of these things that we do without any conscious effort. So what is it? Well, there are two main wings or two subsystems of our autonomic nervous system. On one side, we have the the sympathetic nervous system, which is our stress state. And we may know that as fight, flight, or freeze. And on the second side, the other wing, is our parasympathetic system. So that's our peaceful state. So we have our sympathetic system, which is our stress state, and our parasympathetic, which is our peaceful state. And both are really important for our survival. Now, why do we need to be able to calm it? Well, we want to be able to deliberately calm ourselves when we've been stressed, so that we can protect the major systems in our bodies. So our cardiovascular system, our immune system, our digestion system, and so on. And, you know, I would say if we think back to our cave days, well, most of us aren't that old that we can remember being cave dwellers, but if we cast our mind back to a time when we as people were cave dwellers, our sympathetic nervous system was really critical to our survival. You know, for example, if we were foraging in a forest for food, if we were foraging for our lunch, and there's a predator off in the distance and we notice it, and there's the alerting system in our brain, which is, it goes into surveillance mode. We know we're scanning for predators. When we notice that predator, our autonomic nervous system, so our stress state, is going to kick into gear so that it's preparing us to get to safety, preparing us for survival. So we're either going to take flight or be prepared to fight. So, you know, if we're foraging for lunch, we want to either get lunch, we don't want to become lunch. So we want to get to safety. Now, when we're in that fight or flight state, it's all systems go. So what starts to happen is that our brain activity increases, our stress hormones are released, adrenaline, our blood pressure rises, our breathing is really short and shallow. And that may be something you notice, because generally when you're stressed, that the breathing isn't long and deep, it's very short and shallow. So it's that heightened adrenaline. Now, in our contemporary lives, we still need our autonomic nervous system. We may not be running from lions to saber-toothed tigers, but it does help us to jump out of the way if there's a car that, you know, comes around, careening around the corner. Quite unexpectedly,
Yeah, but it's fine.
we need our autonomic nervous system, our stress state, to help us, you know, meet a looming deadline, an impending deadline. Or,
What's up?
for myself, I need a little bit of adrenaline to take me through this presentation. If I was in my total peaceful state, it would take me a lot longer to get through all the material that I want to today. So I need a little bit of adrenaline to perk me up and present to you. Now, our autonomic nervous system, our stress state, it can actually be triggered by events that are not necessarily life-threatening, like a saber-toothed tiger or a predator. Our stress state it can be activated whether a threat is real or perceived. So for example, if I were to take a step out of my driveway, not have my glasses on, and I can hear a car coming around the corner, I'm going to jump back because I hear it as a threat. But if that car in reality is a clown car and it's made out of something soft and cushy, I may not have realized that, but the amygdala in my brain, our alarm center, it's perceiving that as a threat. So that in itself is activating our stress response. And in our modern lives, again, we may not all be in hand-to-hand combat during the course of our business day, but we may be receiving hostile emails, whether it's from a colleague or even family. We may be, you know, told off by someone. It could be our boss or a client or a colleague who says something where we start to feel shamed. And just that in itself can activate our stress response. Now, also, hopefully we'll have time to get to it a little bit later, but these threats that are coming into us, again, it may not be hand-to-hand combat, but some of the threats could just be threats to our ego. So it's also that self-talk, that negative self-talk. You may, you know, perhaps have had the experience of having been in a meeting, maybe presenting, pitching for work, and you've said something and it didn't quite sit right. And later in the evening, maybe when you're trying to get to sleep, replaying and ruminating on the day and starting to think, why did I say that? I should have said this, I should have said that. They're going to think I'm stupid. I'm not going to land the work, and we start to get on this brain train. Well, just that negative looping can start to activate our stress response. I'll hopefully have more time to talk about that later. So just our thoughts alone, it doesn't have to be a threat of something being flung at us, or a car driving past. It can even just be our thoughts that activate our stress response. So we want to be mindful of what's happening. One of the pieces that I really want to share with you that I think is really important is that we've actually been designed to be in this stress state for just short periods of time, just enough to get us to safety. Because when we are in this stress state, when our sympathetic nervous system is activated, what's happening is that resources are being shunted away from, long-term projects such as building a good, healthy immune system, digesting our food, having a good, healthy heart rhythm, so that we can, in these short crises, get to safety. So we're really just we're designed to be in this state for just short periods of time so we can get away from the predator. So if we're in these stress states for long periods of time, that chronic activation of being in our stress state really starts to burden our gastrointestinal system, our immune system, our cardiovascular system, and our endocrine system. So our big systems can be really impacted if they don't get a break. Pardon me, I'm just gonna have some tea.
Angela, while you do that, do you mind if I ask you this fight or flight response that you're referring to? Does that sort of sit with our body for a certain time? Does it take time to wear off? How does that work?
Yeah, it can take upwards of 20 minutes for the fight or flight response to wear off. And if even just reflecting on the day that you've had so far, how many stressful situations have you found yourself in today, perhaps where your heart has been beating a little bit more rapidly than normal? The heartbeat, we can feel our pulse increasing. On the other side of those situations, have you given yourself an opportunity to take yourself into the peaceful state and recover? So we just want to be mindful of how often that's happening throughout our day, and also building in a little recovery along the way. Pardon me. Yes, so as I was saying, we're actually designed to be in a parasympathetic state, parasympathetic dominant state. With that stress state, we're really just meant to be in that state for short periods of time when we need it. The flip side of that then is that we're meant to be in a parasympathetic or peaceful state most of the time, reflecting on your day. Which state do you feel you've been in more often today, in the peaceful state or in more of a stressful state? When our body is relaxed, that's when it starts to restore itself. And last week in our session on the triad of well-being, we looked at sleep and how when we're sleeping, our immune system recalibrates. Now, we don't need necessarily to be in a deep sleep. Just as long as we're calm, we can even start to bring in that restoration. And when we're calm and awake, the mind is really clear. That's when we do our clearest thinking, our best learning takes place, and we may even find that we're more creative because we're not just in brain fog. So when we're in that calm, focused state, this is considered our high performance state. And I don't know if you remember earlier in the year, there was the fellow who broke a world record for breaking the 5-kilometer. I forget what the time was, but a little bit of the controversy was also around the Nike sneakers that he wore, what high performance they were. But I was watching footage of him as he was preparing to race, as he was coming to the track, and he was really calm and focused. There wasn't big doof music going on. And similar to Novak Djokovic, the tennis player, he's someone who also practices meditation to help bring him into that high performance state, calm and focused. Again, when you watch him coming to the court, he's not necessarily playing, the doof music to razz him up, or like the Bee Gees, as I might listen to get myself all jazzed. So when they're coming into their high performance state, they are calm and focused. So what they're going to do is switch into that into their stress state. So they are full on, you know, all systems go going. But before that, they've deliberately calmed themselves into that peaceful state. And again, as I said, when we're in that parasympathetic or peaceful state, that's when our bodies reboot. So our immune system is recalibrating, our heartbeat is slowing down to a nice gentle rhythm, our blood pressure decreases, and it's also a time when our digestive system can get to work. You know, when we're running away from a saber-toothed tiger, it's not important that we're digesting breakfast. Our body needs all of the energy to power up our muscles to get us to safety. So when we're in that calm state, we can digest better, and our bodies can eliminate waste. And, you know, then our body is starting to use the tissue or we're rebuilding tissue and muscle. Blood pressure lowers, heart rate, again, nice gentle rhythm, and we're in that restorative state. So this is why we need to be able to regularly flip the switch between these two states so that we can allow our bodies to recover. And if not, prevent some chronic disease, perhaps to manage some of those symptoms, and hopefully prevent some of the chronic disease and illnesses as well.
I'm just waiting for other people to drop some questions in the chat box, Angela, but I've got another one for you. In terms of that rest and digest switch, how often should we be turning on or off or resetting?
Yeah, thank you. And also thank you for managing the chat box. I find I'm trying to stay focused on what I'm sharing with you and not get too distracted by reading all the comments, because I'm not much of a multitasker. So thank you. So yes, how often should we bring in that rest and renewal cycle? We really want to do it every day. And, you know, if for those of us who were part of the first webinar, Resilience 101, where I was talking about resilient strategies, looking at ways to weave rest and recovery into the course of our day, you know, in the cracks and crevices of our day. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing approach, just throughout our day. Ideally, not just every day, but throughout the day, if we can. Because as I've said, that stress response, it can take upwards of 20 minutes for it to leave our bodies. And then we want to be able to calm our bodies. So ideally, let's try and do it every day. You know, I was working with a group of engineers at the end of last year, and they came to me probably in September. They were pretty burnt out, and they were just pushing through so that they could get to the end of the year, so that they were expecting pretty much just to fall over so they could spend their holidays trying to recover. So they could at least stand up and get back to work in January. And pardon me, the thing is, pardon me, when we push hard all year, we don't take our holidays, we don't have downtime, what can happen is we end up going into a recovery mode rather than relaxation or recreation mode. You know, we all work really, really hard, and we deserve our downtime. So to have this binge purge approach to stress management, where we just push and think, I'll just, you know what, I'll be fine at the end of the year, I'll just take my holiday. We don't really want to do that. We do want to bring the recovery in regularly so that our hearts can, you know, come back that nice gentle rhythm, lower our blood pressure, and allow our bodies to regenerate and restore.
Angela, while you're taking a little sip there, I do have a question from Debbie.
Hello.
Debbie.
Yes, hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm very interested in your talk, and I was just, you mentioned about how even when you're in a restful state and awake, that your body can be, the immune system can be restoring itself. And it just struck me, is that then basically is why when you're ill, is resting is very much a part of the healing process.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And you know, that takes me to my next point that I wanted to make, was around elite athletes. You know, when we look at elite athletes, their training is not just about being in that full-on stress state where they're pushing their bodies. Recovery is part of their training program. And yes, whether, you know, when we're ill, that's what all we can do sometimes is rest. And that is what's allowing our immune system to recover. For the elite athletes, they're not waiting until the end of the year or after the competition or whatever it might be to recover. That recovery is part of their training program, and it's built in regularly so that the tissues and muscles can regenerate, and our bodies can recover, the heart can slow down, have a little rest, and be ready for when it's needed again. And for those of us who are not elite athletes, although I am in my mind when I go to the gym, we do need to manage our stress, because stress that is unchecked and builds up over time, that's when we can end up being burnt out. And burnout is an accumulation of unchecked stress that gets built up over a period of time. And we can think of stress as the larger, meaner, older sibling of stress. Burnout requires stress to exist, but we can be stressed without being burnt out. So when stress just keeps building, it isn't checked, there's no recovery involved, that's when we can end up being burnt out. And it was actually around this time last year, it was the end of May 2019, when the World Health Organization came out and actually identified burnout as an occupational phenomenon. And according to the WHO, they define burnout as a syndrome that's conceptualized as chronic from workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And it's characterized by 3 dimensions. Burnout is characterized by feelings of energy depletion or exhaustion. There's an increased mental distance from one's job, or feelings of negativity or cynicism to our work, and also a reduced professional efficacy. So, we're just disconnecting, we're not connected to it, kind of care factor is 0. And some of those symptoms, again, of burnout include compassion fatigue. So again, care factor 0, not feeling any pride in the work that we do, and being really disconnected to the work that we do, the people we work with, and maybe the cause that we represent. So key messages when it comes to burnout, the problem isn't just overworking, it's about under recovery. So again, we want to keep building recovery into our everyday, so that we can, keep filling our cup up. And we all encounter stress regularly. It's a part of life. It's really how we look at it, how we manage it, and our relationship to it.
Angela, I've got a question from Natasha here, and I think this is more about if you're going back to the organisation, i.e. the CEO, to argue the case that, you've got are you PNS, is that how you're
the parasympathetic, yep.
Yeah. What's the number one thing that you can sort of say to the CEO? What's the argument for saying, yes, this is real, it's happening?
Yeah, look, bodies get stressed, and when we don't look after our bodies take over. Perhaps, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experienced it, where again, we push all year long, we get to our holidays, and within the first day or 2, we get sick. We have the flu, we're just feeling so unwell that we don't want to move. Well, that's our parasympathetic state saying, right, it's my turn now. We've been in this stress state long enough, and we just stop. Our bodies need to rest and heal. And if we don't look after ourselves, we're going to find ourselves falling over more often, perhaps having a chronic cold where we're just sort of slightly unwell a lot of the time, those chronic illnesses. And workplaces, when people are healthy, workplaces are healthy. The work, generally, the productivity improves because we're able to do our jobs and we enjoy doing it. So the quality, it's not just the quantity, but the quality of our work improves overall as well. So again, healthy workplaces, and look, I have heaps of stats on workplace wellness. So if you're interested in those, please shoot me an email, and happy to share those. Actually, in fact, I was asked today to do a newsletter. And look, it's not going to be a regular newsletter. It might be once a month, where some of the content that I share in these webinars and also on LinkedIn and such, where I'm going to share that more broadly. So again, if that's something you're interested in, please shoot me an email so that whenever I get that happening, I'm happy to share those figures with you. But yeah, workplace wellness is, there's a direct correlation between looking after our people and productivity. I think it's PwC came out with a survey a couple of years ago, or a study 3 years ago, where for every dollar spent on workplace wellness, the ROI is about, it's 1 to 3. So it can be quite significant.
Wow, they are big numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Okay, so back to PNS, some tips to help us activate it.
Oh, yeah. And what I like to share are things that we can actually do easily throughout the day. I love to run when I still had good knees. I really like to run. That was my way of burning off stress. But sometimes during the course of our workday, if we're in a meeting, we can't just duck out and go for a run, or just say, I've got to hit the beach. I just need to have a surf or a swim. It's just not appropriate. So we need to find ways that we can deliberately calm ourselves that are situationally appropriate. And, two of the things that we always have with us are our bodies and our breath. So I do like to use the breath as a way to activate that parasympathetic system and take ourselves into a calm state. And aside from that, I'll just mention, one of the things we can do to keep our brains from not getting so frazzled and again, starting to activate the stress state is to just monotask. When we multitask, it kind of scatters our brain, and I think we can do up to 3 or 4 things at a time for short periods of time. Anything beyond that, our brain starts to get really tired. So when we can, and of course, there are always going to be times when we do need to be juggling a few things, but when we have that opportunity to manage what we're doing and when we're doing it, try to monotask rather than multitask. So, if you're sitting down to read, maybe turn the music off if you can. If you're eating, just eat. Turn off the TV and just really focus on just doing that one thing at a time. Again, that will allow the body to just be a little bit more calm. But there are a couple of things I'd invite you all to do with me if you're interested in trying it. The first one is timed breathing. And we're always breathing, so it's something we can do anytime. And with timed breathing, what we're doing is we're paying attention to the length of our breath. So our inhalations and our exhalations. When our exhalation is even just a few counts longer than our inhalation, what's happening is we're activating our vagus nerve we're telling our vagus nerve to turn on our parasympathetic system, our peaceful state. So our vagus nerve is one of the longest cranial nerves that we have, and it runs from this little space just below our brain and above our soft palate. It runs from there down into our diaphragm. And when it's sort of switched on, what it does is it's sending a signal to the brain to turn up our peaceful state and turn down our stress state. And we can do this just by breathing. So in a moment, what I'll do is, if you'd like to try it with me, what we're going to do is just inhale to the count of 3, and then we'll exhale to the count of 5. And what we'll do is we'll do 3 rounds of that. So what we'll do is we'll inhale through the nose, and whatever is most comfortable for you. Again, it depends on which situation you're in. If you're sitting across from a client who's, you can feel yourself starting to get a little aggravated and you want to calm down, you might just want to breathe in and out gently through the nose. If you're in a space where you are able to be a little bit more audible and have that deep exhalation through the mouth, go for it. Just being mindful of which situation you're in. So when you're ready, I'm going to breathe just in and out through my nose. You think about what's right for you. So when you're ready, we're just going to inhale to the count of 1, 2, 3, and exhaling to the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we'll try that again. So when you're ready, and just in the rhythm of your own breath, so inhaling to the count of 1, 2, 3, and exhaling to the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And just the last time, inhaling to the count of 1, 2, 3, and exhaling 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, just by doing that simple breath practice, if that's one that's comfortable for you, just doing that again is activating our peaceful state. So in the course of a meeting, oh, good, you're feeling better already. Great. You know, these breathing practices are kind of our superpower where, you know, if we can't run out for a swim or a run or whatever it is that helps us to release stress throughout the day, we can do this generally in most of our business situations. And so again, as I've said, what we're doing there is we're activating our parasympathetic system. Now, another thing we can do is just by pressing on our lips, we have parasympathetic fibers in our lips. So if we're in a meeting, you know, we might use our pen or, you know, the back of a finger. If we're sitting at a desk, just even by gently pressing, you know, the knuckle of a finger, whatever it might be, or your pen, just onto the bottom lip. We don't want to tap, we just want to gently, gently press. And that in itself activates the parasympathetic fibers. Now, for some people, that may not be enough, depending on what situation you're in. So go back to the breath, but it's an option. It's one of these little hacks that we can try and see how that works for you. Again, doing little things to activate our parasympathetic, our peaceful state in socially appropriate ways. Pardon me, one more little sip.
I just wanted to, can I ask another question, Angela? I'm just, you talked about negative thoughts before and about them triggering our stress response.
Great, thank you for coming back to that. Yeah, negative thoughts, that inner critic, you know, where we have those unproductive and helpful thoughts. We all seem to have them, that ruminating on, you know, what coulda, woulda, shoulda happened during the day, what we might have said. And when these thoughts, when we start to loop these thoughts and they go unchecked, it can really start to impact our mental and our physical health. And what I find fascinating is that we have between 60,000 and 80,000 thoughts each day. And about 70% of those thoughts are negative. And it's not that we're all a bunch of pessimists or, you know, cranky pants. It's because of our negativity bias. And, you know, just briefly, evolutionary biologists say that we're wired, you know, as though we're still in the jungle, that we're still amongst predators. And so we do tend to interpret a lot of those stressors as threats. And what's happening in our brain, one of our main three systems, the alerting system, when our brain goes into surveillance mode, it's always looking for threats, again, to take us to safety. So that's why a lot of those thoughts can be negative. Now, when we criticize ourselves, and it's important to be really mindful of the thoughts that we have, being aware of them. And this is something that I do in, you know, in the meditation, the mindfulness training that I do. When we sit and we're really aware of what our thoughts are, when we catch ourselves being mean to ourselves, with those thoughts, we're actually activating our stress response. And in fact, we're triggering the adrenaline and the cortisol just by, you know, speaking negatively to ourselves. Oh, you were so silly. Why did you say that? Why did you do that? You know, you're never going to get promoted, and this happened and that, you know, all the brain train, all these negative thoughts, we're actually stressing ourselves out. Just with those thoughts alone, we're activating our body's stress response, adrenaline is being triggered, and so forth. And, you know, we may even find that our hearts are pounding a little bit. Now, we're doing that. We're actually stressing ourselves out just with our own thoughts. You know, we don't necessarily even need a car coming around the corner or, you know, someone saying something nasty to us. We're doing that ourselves. So what can we do? Well, when it comes to that, either that late night brain train or just generally being aware of those negative thought patterns, we can change the conversation. We can change our inner dialogue by neutralizing it. I do when I work with lawyers, I say to them, you know, look for the facts. What were the facts of that conversation you've just had in your brain? They love facts. In other situations, what we want to do with those thoughts that we're having is, let's just first acknowledge the situation that we're in, and it might be this COVID that we're living in. You know, it is a difficult time. So we acknowledge that. We accept, you know, what the parts that we can accept. I accept that I have to stay in the house, you know, whatever the acceptance is, and then take action where we can take action. So we can dissect the conversation. So we're looking at, where are the facts? Did that actually happen? Is it likely to happen? Okay, I'm just on a little bit of a loop. Right, okay, so I'm going to acknowledge that I had a conversation today that, you know, maybe I said things I shouldn't have. I accept that. Tomorrow, the action I'm going to take tomorrow is, I'm going to call that person and I'm going to apologize, or I'm going to ask, you know what, how did you interpret such and such? So that we can neutralize the dialogue in our heads. And it's not that we're looking to turn a super positive spin on things where we're, you know, Pollyanna. It's just, let's just neutralize it, you know, take the oxygen out of it so that we can calm ourselves. And when we start to soothe ourselves by, you know, just being a little bit compassionate towards ourselves, what we're doing is we're releasing our cortisol levels, and we're releasing oxytocin. And oxytocin is sometimes known as the cuddle chemical. So just by being kind to ourselves, to our inner voice, we can release some oxytocin. And oxytocin is a really important cardiovascular hormone because it protects our hearts and our arteries. What oxytocin does is it sits on the lining of the arteries, so it's causing them to soften. So the arteries are softening and they're expanding in size, so the heart doesn't have to work so hard to get the blood through. Now, all that's happening just by being nice to ourselves. Again, not super Pollyanna, just really being kind to ourselves, showing ourselves some compassion. And when it comes to our self-talk, just as a rule of thumb, if we can think of it as, I'm not going to say anything to myself that I wouldn't say to a good friend. You know, to my good friends, I'm going to maybe, sure, you know what, maybe I could have said this or done that, but I'm not going to ridicule or criticize or berate them. And I'm also not going to do that to myself. And just by showing ourselves some compassion, again, we can help improve the health of our hearts and our arteries. So it's very interesting how what goes on in our mind really can impact our bodies as well.
Absolutely. I've got a little question here that's been sent to me directly. It's about yawning. Is there such a thing called stress yawning, or is there such a phenomenon?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. Yawning is fantastic. And again, being mindful of when we do this, that it's socially appropriate. You know, if we're sitting across from a client or a colleague who's stressing us out, we don't want to start yawning in their faces. That just might create some more issues for us. But yawning, what happens when we yawn, what we're doing is we're softening our palate so that it can trigger that vagal response. Because again, the vagus nerve sits just above our soft palate and below the bottom of our brain, so somewhere in there. And singers are trained to be able to soften the palate so that they can yawn and really expand their mouths. Maybe this is a good tip for karaoke. We'll have to explore that.
Yay.
Yes, but when we're yawning, again, we're activating the vagal nerve so that it's, you know, switching on our parasympathetic system so that we start to relax. So whether or not it's a true yawn where we are really tired and we want to yawn, if we start to even just do a fake yawn and, you know, we know we want to calm down, yawning isn't appropriate. It's appropriate to do in the moment. If we even watch videos of animals yawning, videos of babies or other people yawning, that in itself can trigger us to do a proper yawn. But we can even just, you know, and if you wish to try, we can even try to do a fake yawn right now. And, you know, just taking in a breath and, you know, and then, we notice maybe that our shoulders drop a little bit and our jaw drops. And when we drop our jaw, that's also a little bit of a trigger for the rest of our body to relax as well. So yawning is a great thing. Again, it needs to be socially appropriate. If you're in a meeting with someone who's being a little antagonistic, perhaps yawning in their face is not the best technique. We can save that when we're alone.
Yeah. I've got another question about feeling overwhelmed, how to deal with that. Some tips, quick tips that you could share.
Yeah, I think it's important to know what it is that overwhelms you. And that's something we're going to look at coping strategies in our next session. And part of it is, I used to have someone who would say to me, I'm so stressed. So I'd ask, well, what about? We can fix it if we know what the problem is. And she would say, everything. Mm-hmm. Say, okay, well, can we break down everything? So when we know what our stressors are, or when we know what the things are that are overwhelming us, then we can start to look at what are the actions to either decrease the stress, to minimize what it is that's overwhelming us, and start to take action. And when it comes to anxiety, and sometimes there's a connection between feeling so overwhelmed that we become anxious. What helps to bind anxiety is action. So, but we do, when it comes to being overwhelmed, really stressed, to have a good understanding of what our stressors are, and also how we're moving through it. And we'll look at stress models next week. What are the thoughts that we have when we're stressed? What are our behaviors? What are the emotions we have? What happens in our bodies? So that we can identify a little bit quicker when we are stressed, so that we can start to take action, to know what we can do, identifying what your stressors are, where the supports are, who's out there, knowing what it is that's overwhelming you. At work, might it be things that you can delegate? Is there someone that you can speak to, first of all, for some support? And really understanding where your support networks are and who can help with what.
So that twitchy eye that you might get, keeps going, that you think everybody can see, but they probably can't. Is that a sign of stress? Is that something that you might be covering next week, or is that something we could...
Yeah, thank you. It's, again, really knowing our own bodies, what are the physical sensations? Yes, for some people, it might be the twitchy eye. Knowing what is that, I'm getting, that really tight feeling in my stomach. Is it because I haven't eaten? Or is it because I've just listened to someone berate me for 20 minutes and I'm really starting to feel stressed? I know for myself, I've lived with asthma for a very long time. And there was one time when I was saying, after having all the tests as I do annually to check my lungs, my doctor one year said, your lungs are looking the best they've looked in years. And I said, well, that can't be, because I find it so hard to breathe. And I went on and on, convinced that I had some kind of obscure lung disease that my doctor wasn't picking up. And after much discussion and more tests, she said, no, you're stressed. She said, those are your muscles in your chest. She said, you need to, keep opening up your chest, breathing really deeply. And so that was a real learning for me about my body, this is the asthma tension. This is the stress tension. So it's coming to really understand for each of us what's going on in our bodies. And because we all relate to stress, we're all triggered by different things, and our bodies all do different things. So it's learning the language. But yeah, that twitchy eye is a fascinating one, because it does seem as though everyone must see it. And generally it's probably just us, but in some instances, not necessarily the case, where it is quite apparent. And, for people for whom they live with that, we learn different coping strategies as well. So yeah, good one. That the eye is I've had that too, and I'm convinced everyone can see me blinking when in reality they haven't. But yeah, we all have different things that happen to us when we're stressed.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's get back into restoring and resting, and what can we do around that? Are there certain activities? You've always got activities for us, Angela.
Yes. Okay. Well, what I would invite people to do, if they're happy to stand up and join me for some really nice deep breathing. And what we're going to do are just 7 nice deep breaths. And I'll just tell you what we're going to do. And what we're going to do is just, if we're standing, if you're comfortable to stand, of course we can do this when we're sitting, but since we stand, or since we sit so much during the day, it's always an opportunity to get up and move our bodies and just to release some of the stress. So standing comfortably, and if it's okay for you, maybe just doing a few gentle neck rolls. How does that feel? So much of the time, tension sits in our necks and our shoulders. Rotating in the opposite way as well. We might hear some crunching sounds. I know I can hear some crunching in the back of my neck. Starting to feel that loosen, and maybe some nice shoulder rolls, rolling the shoulders back. And rolling the shoulders forward as well. And if it feels okay, turning the arms, turning the shoulders so that our palms are facing forward, but allowing the arms to be down at the side, but just allowing the palms to be forward. Apparently when we're like this, it's a little bit easier for our lungs to get some more air. And maybe having a few bounces of the knees. How does that feel? And just softening, letting the body soften. And what we're going to do is have 7 nice deep breaths. Again, in whichever way feels most appropriate for you, either breathing in and out through the nose. You can take a nice big deep breath in through the nose and exhale through the mouth audibly if that feels right for you. Just a deep You know, and you might feel that your knees soften as well as your body really just releases the air. So in whichever method feels right for you, we're going to take 7 breaths. And rather than counting, you know, where we counted to the 3 on the inhalation and a longer exhalation, we were counting our breath and the timed breathing earlier, we're not going to do that. So it's just moving through the rhythm of your own breath. But we do want to have a little bit longer exhalation, but again, just in the rhythm of your own breath. So when you're ready, just inhaling through the nose. And whenever you feel your lungs really expand, you'll feel the chest rise, just releasing the air. And perhaps sinking down into the knees. And when you're ready, inhaling. And whenever you're ready to exhale, letting that air out. And we'll go again. This is our 3rd breath. Breathing in. Maybe feeling the shoulders rolling back. And exhaling. And breath number 4. And breath number 5, inhaling. And exhaling, just as it feels right for you. Breath number 6. And final round, inhaling. Seven, just noticing how that feels in the body. If maybe you're noticing there's a little bit more real estate between the shoulders and the lower ear and your earlobes. Maybe the shoulders have just dropped a little bit. Maybe feeling a little bit of softness in the body. And, you know, since we're working at home, perhaps these are things that, you know, if these are practices that resonate for you, and there are all sorts that are out there. I like the breath because, like I say, on any given day, I may lose my keys or my eyeglasses or my phone, but I always have my body and my breath with me. So there are always ways that I can deliberately relax myself. And, you know, it may be that I come off of a phone call that has been rather antagonistic, or come out of a meeting that's been really tense. And, you know, sometimes that happens. We have really difficult conversations sometimes through the course of our business day. We want to give ourselves that opportunity to take ourselves into that peaceful state so that we recover. If it's going to take about 20 minutes for that adrenaline to wear off, that stress state to wear off, we can help ourselves by allowing ourselves, taking ourselves deliberately into these peaceful states so that our bodies can recover and stay healthy. So I hope that helped.
Probably a great exercise to do before you respond to an email or a phone call that hasn't actually gone your way, or you find not quite palatable.
Yes, have a few breaths. And, something else we can do is to keep our hands warm as well, to activate to keep us calm. And while being in a meeting, we may not want to stand with crossed arms because that can come across as being quite antisocial. Sometimes just holding our hands, there's some times in meetings I'll just cup my hands and hold them and keep them warm. I've seen people put their hands under their armpits. Again, it might be seen as very defensive. So we can just even, clasp our hands, keep our hands warm, or take ourselves off to the loo, run our hands under warm water and just warm up a little bit. Yeah, so hopefully feeling a little bit more calm.
Absolutely. I cannot believe the time, Angela. We've got this week has gone super quick. I don't know if everybody else is feeling the same, but it's fabulous information as always. I'm just going to let you wrap up if you like, while if there's anything else that you'd like to share with us, and ask everybody else to put any questions that they have in the chat box before we close off.
Thank you. Well, it's, since I'm not able to get out and do workshops face to face, it's really a delight to be able to connect with the Melbourne Business Network in this way. And, we're midweek, it's Wednesday, it's a time to just, to hit pause for a little while midweek, look after ourselves, find different ways to restore so that we can all carry on doing the great work that we do. As I say, let's stay committed without becoming so consumed and burnt out. And for anyone who was wishing to know more, let's connect on LinkedIn. And my email address is angela@collectiveintelligence.net.au. Please send me a message, and happy to stay connected, share whatever information I can with you. Later in the year, as our restrictions ease, I am planning on doing some urban retreats, so some half a day or one day where we get together at a great location in our awesome city and take a little bit of a deeper dive, and we're going to make some great connections, have some fun, and relax.
Absolutely. It's been fabulous getting these insights from you, Angela. I've just put into the chat box, Angela's got one more session, everybody. This is a series of 4 Wind Down Wednesday sessions. And next week on the 10th of June, we'll be covering, as Angela mentioned earlier, stress, the signs, symptoms, and coping strategies. You do not want to miss this one. Look, as Angela said, please reach out to her. I will summarise some of these points, and I'll email them all through to you. There are some people that have not been able to join us today, but the majority of people are here. Either way, you'll get a summary on email, so you've got a bit of a reference point, and in that I'll include Angela's details just to confirm. As I said, everybody, thank you for joining us. Melbourne Business Network is committed to connecting people and helping businesses in the municipality. I have truly wound down, Angela, with all those breathing exercises.
Excellent.
Into the municipality of Melbourne. So thank you for joining us today. If you are keen to join our community, please join us on LinkedIn. We also have a fabulous membership offer, which I will include on the email that I'll send through to you. So again, thank you everybody, and we hope to see you as we wind down Wednesday next week, 4 p.m. We will be on time on the 10th of June. Thanks again,
so much.
Angela. Thank
Take
you,
care.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.